Sure. Fred, one of my favorite resources for data.
Mm-hmm.
Look at population growth. Is it going up or is it going down?
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, in some markets, it's been going down for 50 years, and they're giving away houses for $500 in,
Mm-hmm.
in some markets, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Some during the financial crisis, you had some cities that spent their TARP money tearing down houses to create demand.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik, and with me, as always, is John Cohen. How are we doing, bud?
Oh, we are hanging in there. We're good.
Another day, another dollar.
There you go.
That's right. I got nothing to say. Let's just jump into today's episode. We're going to keep the intro short today just because I feel like it. We got a great guest on today. Excited to hear his story and learn from him and just have a great chat. So with that being said, Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So kick us off. Tell everybody a little bit about you, your background, journey, all that great stuff.
Sure. Started flipping houses with dad at age 5 in California for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, I say. I guess I got bored in high school, decided to pack my bags and move to New York City at 19. Went to performing arts school, and I got to tour the world as a professional artist. And in between gigs, I fell into a Wall Street gig doing acquisition and merger presentations, and sort of started to geek out and realized how much I love marketing, PR, and data. And in around 2004, got news that my mom got cancer and moved back to the West Coast. I wasn't going to join the family business, but as it would be, I was about to go back to Wall Street, and I had a really terrible third interview with somebody that was on the team. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be terrible. And dad's like, why don't you come work with me? And so I joined the hard money loan business. So we, the Norris Group, lends in California and Florida. I've done a lot of charity work. I've raised over $2 million for the local community in the last about 12 years. And along the way, I met Sean O'Toole, which is CEO of PropertyRadar. We did an event for this last year, was our 13th year, called I Survived Real Estate. And he's been the most requested panelist that we've had on the panel. And we've just gotten to know each other over the years, and I really respect his product. And PropertyRadar went national last November. So I got brought on to work with the media. So I get called by reporters and they ask nerdy questions. I'm like Media Switzerland, and they can ask me embarrassing data questions. I'm like, let's do this. And then I teach nationally. I teach investors, mortgage professionals, realtors, and even home services how to get dangerous with data and what data is available. And because it's not just for Wall Street anymore. I'm very passionate about small business, and we have to up our game.
Love it. I think data is definitely an interesting topic, and one that, like you said, I think is growing in this space more and more every year. But definitely want to take it back a little bit. The hard money space, were you guys primarily fix and flip type stuff, or were you across a broad spectrum of stuff?
A little bit more of a broad spectrum. I think one of the great things that Main Street hard money can do that Wall Street hard money can't is that we can really dig into a market. So I'll give you a great example. A couple years ago in California, have you guys ever heard of accessory dwelling units?
I don't believe I have now.
Those are those they're like small, right?
Yeah, well, they don't have to be. They can be up to 1,200 square feet. But Gavin Newsom, our governor here in California, came on hot and heavy as he got elected and said, we're going to build 3 million units. We're so far behind. It's so terrible. And there's just no way to do it. And politicians know exactly where the sticking point is. The National Association of Home Builder has some really great data that they released back in 2016 showing the impact of impact fees, like how much it costs developers. And I got to talk to the chief economist a few years ago. I'm part of this group called the National Association of Real Estate Editors because I've been a creator for over 15 years in the real estate space. And I was like, I just need to know, when you put out this data, does it include the marketing and PR required for these big developments to come through fruition and CEQA and lawsuits? And he says, no. I'm like, so your numbers are actually conservative? He said, yes. I'm like, okay, good to know. So in California, you're looking at, a decade before a project can make it through the finish line. And in 10 years, I mean, if you think about the Great Recessions till today, I mean, think about that. I mean, it's nuts. So ADUs in 2017, the state said enough. They knew where the problem stuck. So by the time development was happening at the local level, you would have NIMBYs show up. NIMBYs are not in my backyarders. Builders call them bananas, build absolutely nothing anywhere near anythingers. And they said, by right, you as an owner can build a secondary unit on your property. It doesn't mean that you get to sell it separately. Under very rare occasions, you have to be a nonprofit to do that. But they just slowly started, not slowly, they just stripped local municipalities' zoning regs. Just said, by right, you don't have to be an owner occupant. I mean, they've laid it on thick. So much so, every time the cities came out with something that was opposing it in like weird ways, like, okay, well, the minimum lot size has to be like 15,000 square feet. The state would come back and they keep honing it in. It's super interesting. So as a hard money local lender, I saw that opportunity and we started funding those very early on. We're Wall Street trying to be more national in scope. It can't be on your radar because in New York, ADUs aren't a thing yet.
Right.
But it's just one of those interesting things. So Main Street hard money is definitely going to continue to play a role because those local opportunities are very timing driven and now political driven.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about real estate is it's really tough to create, paint everything with a broad brush. A lot of people have talked about, how has the market performed through COVID, right? I've gotten that question from people and it's like, what asset and what area? And you're going to get very different answers, right? Like, you talk about anywhere in the Southeast and it's, besides maybe, hotels and office and everything's done great. And you talk about different asset classes. And even I'm not even, well-versed enough to talk about other asset classes, but yeah, I think it's really interesting that, you can be so localized and do so well because of how local real estate really is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You guys are in New York and Florida, two completely separate markets. John, do you know Melissa Shea by
I
chance?
know her very well. The RIA.
Yeah, we just interviewed her for our data-driven real estate podcast, and my family is originally from Long Island. So interviewing her and listening to, out of the 10 rentals she still has in New York, only one is paying, and she's fronting $35,000 in payments every month. And then Chris, the last time I took a loan application from Jacksonville, Florida, I called the guy back. I'm all, dude, you're missing a zero because it was 35. It was $35,000 for a triplex. I'm like, yeah, this can't be right. He's like, no. I'm actually trying to renegotiate it down. And it was $35,000.
That's wild.
Yeah. So it's so funny. You guys are in such different markets. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think, that's one of the nice things too about, all these things changing and why we've seen, so much migration and stuff is, some of these places have just gotten pretty crazy and backwards and, just even the cost has just gotten astronomical. I mean, I know when I moved down here 5-ish months ago, I probably had like 5 to 10 people that I did not expect at all reach out to me and be like, hey, why are you moving to Florida? What are you doing? What are you thinking? And basically like the premise ended up being like, hey, I'm thinking about it too. And it's just been pretty interesting to see. And I have like a joke for myself. It's not really funny, but it's like a rare and they're like a unicorn to find somebody that's born and raised in Jacksonville, Florida, because everybody I talk to is from somewhere else. It's literally like 1 in 10 people I talk to is from here. Everybody else is from somewhere else. And even within Florida too, because it's now also interesting to see you're getting migration from other cities in Florida to Jacksonville as well. Like you're having people are getting pushed out and they're looking for other places. So that's going to be an interesting trend just within the state as well.
Yeah, I follow the migration trends and you're right. Like Miami-Dade is the largest driver of migration up into the Southwest Florida market. And so, you look at, Florida is the number one, the number one net migration state and the number 2 for immigration in the country. So it's got dual engines. You had all the hurricanes where like after Hurricane Maria, you had a lot of people from Puerto Rico also plant roots and I don't think they're ever going to move back. And then you've got the states that don't have these, it's not just the senior population that's moving there, but my dad just moved to Florida and he becomes a consumer. He doesn't need a job. He's coming there with net wealth. He's doing it for tax purposes. He moved to Sarasota and he's a happy camper. So I do believe in Florida long term. I hope price appreciation slows a little bit, because as a landlord, my rates aren't locked. That's not very fun. But it's been an exciting time down there, and owning new stuff down there is nice. Sean O'Toole, the owner of PropertyRadar, he thinks I'm nuts. He doesn't like Florida. He loves California. So we like to fight about that.
That's funny. California is probably one of the hardest places to do business, and it's expensive.
It is.
Places.
Well, you know what? It's like New York, though. You'll appreciate this. It's like, if you're going to touch something and you can get the right deal, I mean, what Chris has to do in Jacksonville to make the kind of checks you can make in Long Island, you touch one and you're off, you're making as much as, we have in California all year. So if you can play a numbers game, it's good in these other states. And New York is going to have some very interesting opportunities. And Melissa Shea on our podcast, she mentioned a few that she goes after that I really didn't appreciate. I didn't know. I knew New Jersey was bad. I didn't know how bad New York had become. So you'll have some pre-foreclosure activity. You'll have investors that give up because they can't hang because of what your governor has done with the moratorium. So, that's where investors are going to find some opportunity at that local level if they're paying attention.
It's crazy, because there's been an influx of northeastern buyers to hit these other markets that we've historically played really well. And we own, 800 units in Jacksonville, Florida, and we're deciding on selling a property, and we're probably going to go to market. And the brokers are just coming in with, give me 3 groups, right? They're the 3 new groups that we've been talking to. And it's exactly what you just said. The other day, my partner was in Florida for 2.5 months. He came up here, and we were at a meeting the other day with one of our lenders, and we were at my partner's dad's country club, and we were sitting there, and he literally said to me, he said, "Is New York really that bad?" And I said, it wasn't as bad as it was a year ago, but he said, "We should just take a trip into the city to see what's going on." I'm like, okay, we can, but it's, there's not traffic anymore. Like the streets are open. There's not people walking everywhere. I mean, it's different. And what you said, there's like a mass migration out from the investor level, not the people level, taking that off the table, but there are people that just can't hang anymore, right? They own 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buildings, and 10 tenants are paying rent, because our governor has done such a good job at just basically saying no one has to pay, nobody has to do anything. There's a wherewithal that any individual has, that there will be opportunities soon, whether that's tomorrow, 6 months, 12 months. But as long as there's still no payments and moratorium, as long as that exists, there's going to have to be real pain from investors that just can't go anymore. If they have hard money loans, if they have agency loans, they're getting some type of relief. But the hard money lenders, they don't operate under CDC or federal guidelines. They can take the property back. Now, you might have a problem in court with the whole court system being delayed, but there will be real opportunities in the future in New York. And, from my standpoint, I joke around. I'm the New Yorker that says I want to move for tax benefits. I'm never leaving New York. It's sort of intriguing, because we buy a lot of distressed stuff or stuff that has problems. It's actually intriguing what I've always historically said. I don't want to play in my backyard. I might be able to sooner rather than later. So it's actually something that I look at and say, is there an opportunity that I never thought I'd be able to, ever have? Is that opportunity going to rear its ugly head in the future? And it's exciting. It's something to look forward to.
Absolutely. You never count out New Yorkers. That's a huge mistake. I loved my 7 years there. I was there during 9/11, and it taught me a lot. New York is a very special place and has a lot of family history for me. So nope, not counting New York out. I think urban markets are going to be fine. I'm waiting to see migration trends and if the work from home really sticks and how it works. The tech companies so far has said, there's going to be a hybrid. I believe a little bit more in suburban markets like Long Island, where you can have the hybrid experience to where you can still come into the market. But one of the things that we're seeing in California, I've talked to a few agents as an example in Palm Springs and San Diego. The median price in the Bay Area is like 1.5, 1.6 million. In San Diego, it's like 800,000. If you have to be up in the Bay Area twice a month, when you're saving that kind of money and still living in a really great market, airlines, you can buy a lot of first class tickets to and from Northern California. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. That's what the data that I can't wait to see. We've got counties side by side that are having a very different experience. Like I know Melissa and I talked a lot about Long Island versus New York City. People just want more space. And so they're really rethinking what lifestyle and what they want it to look like. But I think the city is going to be fine in the long term. I occasionally still go into the city and look at, I'm like, oh, it'd be fun to own there.
Yeah. I tend to think cities will come back. I think, I've just seen a lot of like pent up demand, especially in and around my age group. So 29, so anywhere from, early 20s to early 30s, I'll say, of, that lifestyle of living in the city, the work-life play stuff. So, I think people would like to work from home, but I think one thing that's interesting, and I don't know how much of an actual problem this is going to be, but I've started to see some like videos, and a lot of it like meme videos, like jokes, but a lot of jokes are rooted in truth, where I think HR companies are going to have a really tough time trying to please a lot of people, where people are going to want flexibility, but some people are going to want, hey, I just come in whenever I want, or I come in a couple of times a week. And like, I think a lot of people are still going to want their desk in the office and not like a rotational place. And it's like, okay, well, why am I going to allow a hybrid if I've still got to carry 30 desks for 30 people?
Yeah.
I can save money and have 5 desks for 5 people coming in on rotation and, conference rooms and stuff. So I think what might happen is, there's going to be a lot of people disappointed because everybody has different wants now that they've experienced this, and they're going to want different blends of hybrid models. And I'm really curious to see where people actually end up, because I do think you'll get it to some degree of, people being able to work home more frequently. But I don't think it's going to be this massive thing where everybody's working from home all day, every day. Cause I don't know. Me personally, I like being in the office. I can't work from home. I hate it. I have a really tough time separating, working from relaxing while I'm at home. But I know other people are very different. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be this massive trend where 50% of people are working from home all the time.
I also lived in fairly terrible places when I was an artist in New York City.
I'm sure.
I'm imagining in my 20s that, in my Washington Heights, I lived along the George Washington Bridge, and I was in a 5-floor walk up. And of course I was on the top floor, and man, if you plugged in like one too many things, like the entire building blew. So hopefully, over the last 15, 20 years, they've done some upgrades on some of the buildings that I've lived in over the years, but
who knows?
it was a small space too. I think my smallest room was like 10 by 10. I refused to pay more than $600 in rent in New York City, which I abided by while I was living there. But yeah, it didn't come with good internet. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's I remember I had someone that was moving from Georgia to New York, and I was working in the city doing real estate, and I was showing her apartments, and she wanted to live in the West Village. And I was like, well, your budget's not going to get you the West Village. So her mom was with her, and we went into it was like a 6-story walk up with a shared bathroom. So she had like a $2,200 budget. I'm like, well, this is what you're going to get for, $2,200. The mother's like, you are not sharing a bathroom with people on the floor. I was like, it might not even be people on the floor. It might be your friend. It's not just, an exclusive bathroom for your floor. It's anyone living in these apartments. And like her mind was blown, like, oh my God. The mother's like, you can get a whole 4,000 square foot house in Georgia for $2,000. But, that's the nature of the beast.
I lived in a hotel converted to, when I first was going to school in New York, it was the Hotel Belclair. It was on Broadway, and I think it was 77th. And I shared with 3 other guys, and it was 2-room, not a 2-bedroom. It was a 2-room. And one had like a cabinet with a TV in it and a hot plate and a sink, and the apartment's only closet. And then the other room was 2 bunk beds and the bathroom where I could be sitting on the toilet, washing my hands and like play in the bathtub at the same time. It was so small. And I love New York. It kicks your butt, and it's just, you're not there to go to sleep. Hello.
There
That's
you go.
For sure. So what made you get involved with more of like the data side of things? Because I think, we've been touching on it and tiptoeing around a little bit and talking about it, but what was that transition over for you onto that side of things within, the real estate community?
What I learned on Wall Street, you're there from 5 to 1 in the morning, and the bankers show up, and they're doing a huge M&A presentation, and you've got, 1 week to create an 80-page deck, everything from, research on stocks and geographic areas that they're investing in. And it was just really interesting to me, and making data talk. I think that's particularly what I'm so passionate about. So when I joined the family business, my father, Bruce Norris, is best known for market timing. In 1997, he created a report called the California Comeback, why he thought prices were going to double in California. And at the time, that was very controversial because real estate was doing horribly. And then in 2006, he wrote the California Crash, and that's what I helped him with. It was a 400-page binder with over 800 charts of exactly why we were leaving the state of California and why we thought it was going to get so bad. So it's just very well researched. So that's what, our brand got known for. And my job was trying to make it, researching all the data, putting it in visual so people could see it, getting a lot of stink on the charts. Like, some charts are only like 1 cycle long. You want to see 3 cycles. Is this really what causes this in the market? Is California specific, or does it happen nationwide? So my dad taught me a lot about that. And, he's got a high school degree, and I love, one of the best things I ever got was, he's on a board of a local college that collects the data that we use. And the guy who puts it together, the PhD, is like, I don't know how your dad does it. If an economist calls 1 cycle, he's a superstar, and your dad's done it twice in a row. It's pretty phenomenal. And he's using our data, which is very embarrassing. And then being able to help investors time has been one of the best things in life, is to get thank you letters from people saying, you've not only changed my life, but you've changed generations of our family because of what we've been able to do. And listen, I was a broke actor in New York City until 2004. And, now I hold rentals in California and Florida, and my life is forever changed. So I'm grateful for my dad and the data and making it less emotional. My biggest regret is I didn't buy more from 2009 to 2012. Oh, well, what are you going to do?
I think one thing that I struggle with is, there seems to be so much data out there, and you never know, where to look, how to look at it. And sometimes, it's very easy to, I don't want to say misrepresent, or, but maybe misinterpret or draw the wrong conclusions from data. So like, how do you combat that issue of like, you can go on Google and look up, just population growth in Florida and spend, probably years looking at stuff. But how do, for people that are building businesses, looking at properties, trying to make decisions and not all that stuff, obviously I know there's, tools out there and stuff, but how do we not get bogged down by data and actually like find the stuff we're actually looking for that's going to be helpful?
Analysis paralysis. Yeah. I think the closer you can get to the data personally, the better. I think there's opportunity in most markets, and it's just up to you to find it. And it's okay to want to stay local and within a 2-hour driving, distance from any of your stuff. I totally get it. And every market is different. California is very different from Florida, different foreclosure laws. Florida was way behind. So California was already improving. We had institutional Wall Street buying up a storm, driving up prices, and Florida was still, in the middle of the foreclosure crisis. So very different cycles, and you just really have to know your local market, and it's okay to be a local expert. That's what makes you shine. And now we're competing against Wall Street. So you just really need to plug in locally. I love getting involved at the local level. Don't trust the media. It's not that they're writing salacious headlines. Like right now I work with media quite a bit, and, they're looking for the juiciest headline. I know that I have to speak in clickbait. I write for Forbes on occasion, and Bigger Pockets and Think Realty magazine. And, they want titles that sell, and the more clickbaity you can be, the better. But the truth is, like the foreclosure, everybody wants to talk to me about foreclosure. I'm like, well, here's the chart. I'm sorry to disappoint you. It's just not going to happen. And the stuff that's coming through now is stuff that should have happened in March. But you know what? If we think about the playbook that we rolled out in 2009, we were extending people's terms of their loan, even though their property had halved in value. We create a playbook that transfers very beautifully to this current market. Could we have pre-foreclosures? Yes. But does it look good on anybody's resume, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, to have a huge wave of foreclosures and evictions? No. Those evicted people have to go somewhere. The landlord next. I mean, you're going to have a string of rules with them getting rid of and hiding evictions. That's what's going to be next if we don't play ball together. So, it's concerning. Anyway, path of progress is something that I look at. I love looking at in Florida. One of the things I've been researching is the bullet train and the 12 stops. I build where one of the 12 stops are. Florida has a long way to go in the mass transit, and they're growing quickly. They need something. So I'm banking on that, and I love being in a path of progress to where I think it's going to go well. So economic development, if you're local, plug into your planning commission, pay attention to the population numbers, big economic development opportunities with people investing in your area, big companies coming in. There's some clues that you can get. You just have to plug in.
So when you say plug into the local market, I guess, what are some, you said the economic development board, is that like, hey, phone them up, ask them for resources, ask them questions? Do most of them have like, standard things that you can just look up and find? Like what, a little bit boilerplate, because we cover a lot of people. You can't really get too specific into markets or states, but like, what are some general, 3-5, things that people should look at to start to tap into that, local data?
Sure. Fred, one of my favorite resources for data. Look at population growth. Is it going up or is it going down? In some markets, it's been going down for 50 years, and they're giving away houses for $500 in, in some markets. And there's a reason for that. Some during the financial crisis, you had some cities that spent their TARP money tearing down houses to create demand.
What is TARP money?
TARP was the funds that the federal government gave to cities to deal with the foreclosure crisis. States like California used it to renegotiate people's loans and figure out ways to keep people in place, where some markets just like, yeah, we're going to foreclose on you and we're going to tear down those houses because they're dangerous, they're blight, nobody's ever going to live in them again. But that was a trend that was happening for 50 years. Migration was coming out. So look at the data. Most cities will have a good economic development department, but there's the state. How is your state doing? How is your county doing? And how is the local municipality doing? At the local level, if they've got a good economic development website, they'll have stuff on populations, big employers coming to town, big economic development projects like hotels coming to town. If like Apple decides to open a store in your town, they're very picky on where they develop those opportunities. You have to have certain amount of people worth so much money, so many minutes away driving distance. So, when you have some of those big box retailers or high-end stores, that's a clue. So it's just plugging into those kind of things. And at the local level, even still, if those aren't available there or that's not happening, you might be able to find deals just because you know the market and the numbers work. It doesn't have to be that complicated. You don't have to be in the path of progress. You just have to be very comfortable with your local numbers and make sure it works. You're buying $10,000 houses in Indianapolis. Maybe you don't even care. So.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So I think that's something that we've always done where it's okay. When we bought deals, it's all right. The numbers work as is. We don't have crazy assumptions on our deals. And that's why a lot of our deals that haven't had problems that we didn't foresee have done incredibly well, because rent growth, population growth, all that stuff, right? It was just juice to the table, as well as, cap rates, interest rates have come down, which have helped. But, like something that I think, John and I have talked about, and I think is going to start to become a problem, is because so many people are flooding into some of these markets, like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, how do people, stay competitive without making these crazy assumptions? Because, I've personally seen rent growth significantly higher than I projected on deals I've underwritten. Like it's funny you mentioned Indianapolis. John and I were looking at a deal that I underwrote when I first joined back in like 2016. And we had the rent going to like $850 by spending X amount, whatever. They spent like nothing, and the rent was at like $950, $1,000. So it's like, we probably would have thrown all our money at that deal if we had known that. And it's like, I think that's where data can start to come into that a little bit. But how much do you guys use data for some of that stuff of like looking at, what do you think rent is just going to go up naturally? Is there going to be high inflation for your expenses? Because that's something, nobody looks at, right? When we were first buying deals in Jacksonville, the payroll per unit was like 900, 1,000. Now you're lucky if you get it to 1,200. So like nobody put in 20% expense growth for their payroll, right? You would have been crazy and you would have never bought a deal, but that's the reality. Same thing with insurance. Insurance has been going up year over year over year at crazy rates. You want to talk about the price of construction, lumber and all that stuff right now. Nobody foresaw that. How much does data play into that, and how much can we realistically use that to try to help us stay competitive?
I think that local bit of knowledge is super helpful because I think local experts tend to be a little bit more grounded because they have some history.
Mhm.
So I'll give you a really good case in point. So, and when I'm building in Southwest Florida in the Cape Coral market, lots that I'm buying now for 20 grand, and as low as 9,500, at the peak of the last market was going for 100,000.
Wow.
And so the locals understand the history of this area, and you've got outsiders coming in and bidding up these lots, and they don't know that the flood zones have changed. And FEMA just updated those, and they're buying a single lot, and you're never going to buy anything. You're never going to be able to build anything on it. You even have locals telling them you can't build there.
Mhm.
I own the lot next door. Because of flood zone, you're going to have to raise the elevation, and it has to be graded just so. So you're never going to be able to build anything, and they don't care. They just see cheap dirt. So by having that local expertise, you don't get caught up in the current data, if that makes any sense. So you know that there's going to be a lot of outsiders looking to hide money, and it actually might make sense. You might be able to do a 1031 exchange and help a California investor out. They just want to out of California. They want to park their money in something that cash flows better than they'll ever get in California. And they're perfectly okay with the risk because Florida is more landlord friendly. You know, there's just a lot, they're doing something very specific, but you as a local just have the local intel not to get caught up thinking this is going to last forever. The deal has to stand on its own from day one. You don't get caught up in the hype. So something you got to keep in mind for sure.
Awesome. No, that's great. Because I think, we see a lot of times people that are, buying deals and what we think is these crazy rent assumptions. And we're like, all right, your deal only works if that works.
Correct. I think that's a mistake in my opinion.
So what data, as you guys look at it, do you find is the most powerful or the most important when you're looking at, we'll say, looking at markets or things to find? Do you find certain things are significantly better than others, or, things are very overrated that you find are, popular, but not really as important?
I'll speak for me personally. Within PropertyRadar, we have down at the neighborhood level a lot of census data information on growth, and some of those things are hard to keep up because those only update every year. So you're really looking backwards a whole year, and a lot has happened in the last 12 months because of COVID and people moving around. I really like looking at the demographic trends over the years, specifically before COVID, what was happening. On Fred, you can get data on breaking down the demographics by age group. Where is the most of the growth coming? Am I going to have a problem this place only attracting seniors, or is it attracting Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z that are going to stay put and have kids and have natural growth as well as in migration? And the economic development data, I want to be in a market where the population is growing. It doesn't have to be huge, but I just want to be in a market that is making good headlines. Not everyone's leaving because crime is terrible, and the mall shut down, Amazon's moving in, and our best spot in town is now a warehouse. That doesn't get me excited. So
right.
I like being in suburban markets that is close, and that's just me. And I think that's also what's great. You have to know who you bring to the table as a real estate investor. I'm more of a buy and hold guy. I suck at flipping. I over improve. And the only reasons I've made money at flipping in the last 5 years is because the market saved my butt. So you know what? I know myself. I watched way too much HGTV. You bring you. At PropertyRadar, we talk about chocolate versus peanut butter. Chocolate is who you bring to the business, your expertise. If you're an introvert and I start talking to you about door knocking, you immediately shut down and like, I hate you. I'm not ever going to do this business. But what you don't know is I can start throwing you interesting things like, hey, let's look at site development. Let's look at construction. Let's look at lot splits. Let's look at accessory dwelling units. Let's look at upzoning or opportunity zones. Much more data focused, much more development operations focused. So that's the who you bring to the business, or the chocolate. The peanut butter is there. The data is there. We have over like 200 fields. So whatever your niche is, I'll give you an example. Melissa says that she focuses on people with reverse mortgages in Long Island at 5 years after they originate the loan, because they've never seen that much money in life. They typically misspend everything, and within year 5, they're already having trouble. Knowing that in New York, it's not cute to foreclose on a senior, and it takes a 5 to 7 year process. she's able to do some really cool things. She loves working with seniors. I mean, that's the perfect example of chocolate versus peanut butter, because she's a local expert. She loves seniors, and I have the data. I was able to show her. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. Look at all these opportunities. I was able to search by reverse mortgages, single family homes, people over the age of 70, and where the transfer happened, the loan happened like 5 years ago, and there was almost 1,000 opportunities. I was like, I would never even thought of that. That's a perfect example of a hyperlocal expert nailing it. It's awesome.
So you bring up something interesting. Do you find it's better to use data to try to find opportunities, or do you think it's better to come up with like some sort of thesis or an idea of an opportunity and see if the data supports it?
I'd rather start with you. So let's do Jacksonville as an example. Like the stuff that you look at multi, right? Is there any specific thing that you look for when you're looking? Is it just strictly cap rate?
I don't know. I think the story is always important to us. Like, why is this person selling? Why should we buy it? Where's our competitive advantage? But then, I think cost basis is important. Yield is obviously important. Our exit is important. That's kind of all the things we've mostly talked about, unless John, you want to chime in with something else.
Story is the most important thing for us. And I like the question, data first or thesis first. But for me, the biggest thing is, and it sounds stupid because it's a really generic end, but is there really value here, right? Like, are the rents low? Is it a good unit? I don't want all one bedrooms unless I'm in a market where one bedrooms are high demand, right? I want more 2s and 3s because they cost the same amount to run and they command more rent. But if I'm in an urban infill location where it's going to be all 20-year-old people living there, well, I want 1 bedrooms because 2 bedrooms aren't going to work unless it's a 2-bed, 2-bath, because then each person could have their own space. So the story is more important, and where there's real value. So like if you take Jacksonville, you say, okay, where are good school districts and those properties have good 2 and 3 bedroom mixes, right? Something like that. And you could start picking, okay, I like this area because it's going to attract. The single family house in the area is $400,000. These people can't ever buy that, but they can pay $1,200 a month. Like that's how I would go about it to find location.
Got it. Okay. So a great example of this, that's great. So there's a few different ways to slice and dice. So you get down at the local level and you decide to tackle the market of absentee owners versus owner occupants. If you're doing multi, you're obviously going to be speaking probably a lot more to non-owner occupants, not necessarily, but what are some of the things, the data points to watch for? Aging landlords is a very popular list. So only talking to landlords that are over the age of 65. Why? Because as we age, we typically become net sellers of real estate. We're tired of tenants, toilets, and trash. I could also say, you know what? I only want to look at landlords that have owned for over 27 years. Why? Probably because they've taken all the tax benefits away. Have they been aggressive in raising rents? Do they have repairs that are needed? The longer that they own it, if they're getting tired, maybe they're just a little bit laxed on it. So you start to layer the data and you start going after very specific deals instead of just a broad market. So your competition is blowing their marketing. I'm only going to look at, triplexes and fourplexes in Jacksonville, and that's where they stop. Huge mistake, because you're going to blow your entire marketing wad on one, outreach, to where if you get a lot more specific, you can be touching them in multiple channels, multiple times, and it's your right specific audience. So a lot of different data points to wield it down for sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think you just brought up 2 really interesting data points to look out for. How do, I'm sure you could sit here and list a bunch, right? We can do that. Or how do people reverse engineer potential data points to look for like that? If you are, let's say, sticking again with the multifamily theme, like how do people, think about that? Is it just talking to people that other people have done? Is it just reverse engineering, or is there just like a ton of really good sets that people have success with? Like, how do you think about that?
We definitely have popular lists in PropertyRadar that people use it quite a bit. We call them quick lists because they are so popular. So I would just have to put it in an area and then, do a quick list and say absentee landlords. Here in California, one of my favorite is looking for absentee landlords that live out of state, because I'm like, you're crazy. There's so much stuff going on with the moratoriums and whatnot. If you're not plugged in at the local level, like, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
But my marketing can really change to them as well. I could say, hey, you may not know this, but 211 is now the recipient of over $38 million, to where if you have tenants that aren't paying, they're offering grants that will backfill up to 80% of 12 months rent that you're looking for. I don't know if you're, tired of tenants, toilets, and trash. I'm a local landlord too. If you want some resources, give me a call. But if you're ever looking to sell, I'm here. By mixing up your marketing, making it a lot more personal, if we ever took a marketing course, we've heard the rule of 7. Take 7 impressions before a consumer does business with you. Well, depending on who you talk to now, it's like from 20 to 73 because of double screening. I'm watching Game of Thrones on TV, playing on my iPhone, and an embarrassing game on my iPad. You never have my undivided attention. So my job as a marketer is trying to drive them down the funnel as quickly and efficiently as possible. And depending on my market, that's probably going to take a lot of smarts. I'm not going to be on TikTok trying to talk to aging landlords where, where if I'm a realtor looking at the move up market, maybe I'll spend some time there creating some cute videos, but it's really knowing your market, your expertise, but then also the asset class and who you're chasing. Demographics is definitely one of my favorite. I think it offers a lot of opportunity when you can stack the data like that, because your marketing can be a lot more specific to that group.
100%. I love that. I think that's really great. So what do you think, somebody that is looking to get into the data world but doesn't want to be overwhelmed, what are some of the best like first steps to kind of, take? Like, is it just, trying to find some stuff in a market they're already in? Is it, just honing in on a couple of things and then, without, because we're talking about very specific things that, might take some wherewithal, some understanding to kind of really hone into. So what are some of the early steps to kind of get you into that process?
When I teach, I actually just spoke in Rhode Island last week. And one of the things I do is I pull data at the local level, and I start with competitive analysis. And the two things I pull are iBuyers in Wall Street, what they're doing in your market, if at all. In Rhode Island, they don't happen to be there right now. Where else did I speak? Oh, I spoke at Indianapolis last week as well. And I showed them, I'm like, hello, Zillow just came into your market, and here's the game that they're playing. You need to understand. I then go to flippers and I'm like, hey, over the last 365 days, these are what the flippers in your market are doing. Or I could say like, hey, I only want to look at landlords that are buying. What are they buying? At what price point? Like, what are they thinking? Trying to backwards engineer. By doing a lot of research on your market, you can sort of understand what people are buying and try to backwards engineer why. Because you as an investor need to make some decisions. Are you going to play in the same sandbox, copy them? Are you going to sell them what they want? Or are you going to avoid it altogether and find another niche that nobody else wants? So I just want to know. And then from there, I jump from the competition and I start building my list, incorporating some of that. So how that works is I'm like, hey, over the last 365 days, and I'll use Indianapolis because it's the one that I just did. I pulled the data and I'm like, hey, there's been like 1,000 flips over the last in this 5-mile radius in the last year. Here's the buy box. This is what they're after. They're after 3 ones. This is the year that it's built. Here's how it's owned. I'm like, what does that trigger for you? They're really old. So right away you have a benefit because Wall Street doesn't like old stuff. Good for you. They're not going to go hard in your market. The only thing that Zillow had bought so far was like a 2005, didn't need any work at all. They're after the easy ones. So as soon as I know the market competition, I can make those decisions and then start finding my niche and really back into what I like. Like at the end of the day, you want to wake up and enjoy what you're doing. It's worse, how terrible to wake up and go, God, I hate this. The data is there to meet you, the peanut butter. And as long as you're very clear on what you like to do, and that's if you don't have experience. If you're an experienced investor, what's worked for you? Let's just do a lot more of that and figure out the data points. Maybe you stumbled upon something on accident, but let's see if we can make it more formulaic and ways to automate it. A lot of times that's the case. You just have these old timers that they have those relationships and people come to them. Okay, well, can we figure out a way to augment that? Are you walking your comp when you buy one? Are you taking the time to be like, who did I just buy from? Oh, a 70-year-old in this zip code that has owned for over 20 years? Let's mail to everybody in the neighborhood. Hey, this is what I just paid for this asset. If you're looking to do something the same, want to carry paper? Give me a call. Like that's another thing that people don't do. They don't follow up. and they don't walk the comp. If you buy one, you should be walking that comp and try to get a lot more. You've already got proof, the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. So when you work with people, you found a lot of success of like, hey, we just bought this for X, do you have any interest type of thing?
Yeah, you've got proof. You're showing them data. So somebody else was crazy, so they can be crazy too, and they've got a partner in being crazy.
100%. I love that. I think that's a really great place to wrap up. I think people got a ton of info from that, and are gonna pull a lot from it. I know you definitely gave me a ton of things to think about over the next few months, so I appreciate it. Well, I appreciate it, but also kind of hate it because now I've got a bunch of new ideas and I've got to figure out what the hell I'm going to do.
Hey, I'm always here. Reach out.
Yeah, no, for sure. But no, I really appreciate you coming on. This is great. If people do want to, follow you, get in touch with you, connect with you, learn more about you or your business, where can they do all that stuff?
PropertyRadar.com is our website. There's a free 3-day trial, and you'll get an intro video with me walking you through different data sets so you don't get lost. There's over 200 criteria that you can search against. So it's sort of fun to help people explore. And a lot of people just don't know the kind of data sets that are available that you can end up putting together. So that's fun. Also, community.propertyradar.com. You don't have to be a subscriber, but if you have questions about strategies or data, I'd be glad to, I monitor there and I can answer questions for you.
Awesome. Guys, definitely go check it out. I know I am going to. And if I know John at all, I'm sure he's probably maybe even already pulled it up on his computer and is going to do it right after we get off. So
I would churn my screen, but I have the website open as we've been talking.
We've known each other too long.
That's for sure.
Mortgage people and property data. There's a lot of stuff there from foreclosures to zoning. There's a lot to explore. So don't get lost, ask questions, and I'd be glad to help.
Awesome. Guys, definitely go check it out. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you are not already subscribed, it would mean the world to John and I if you would do so. And if you are, please send it to someone that would get a tremendous amount of value from this episode. Aaron, once again, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was great.
Pleasure.